the idea is to try to.
Can you hear us?
A new piece of legislation. So.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Just
Folks online, there was a very bad accident in Hampstead. So a bunch of people got kind of held up on the way here. And are taking here. So we'll get started in just a few minutes.
Are you there, Jesse?
Yeah, Jeremy, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Glenn said to let you know he won't be able to attend this afternoon.
All right.
I don't know if you talked to him.
I haven't talked to him yet, but thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, he's traveling and wasn't able to join.
Come here, little girl. Way down. Missy, hush.
So folks, go ahead and get started with this meeting. So this is the March 11th meeting of the Southern Regional Advisory Committee. My name's Fred Scharf and I chair the committee. I'm a professor of fisheries science over at UNCW. I've been a member of this committee for as long as I can remember. Been chairing it for the past several years. And the assistant chair is Tom, who's on the Zoom. Tom, are you able to introduce yourself real quick?
Can y'all hear me?
Yep. Tom Smith. Froze up.
Tom, are you there?
We'll let Tom introduce himself when he comes back online. And who else did you say was online?
Jeremy Skinner.
Jeremy, are you able to hear us and say hello real quick?
Yes, sir. How are you, Fred?
I'm good, Jeremy. How are you?
Doing good. My name is Jeremy Skinner. I'm a member of this advisory committee. I've been on the spotted sea trout committee as well. Sitting in a commercial fishing seat. I commercial fish as well as recreational fish myself, and avid sportsman and boater, and enjoy being on the water. I have two little boys that I look forward to raising on the water as well.
Thanks, Jeremy. Work around the table this way and introduce ourselves.
All right, my name is Richard Sear, just newly appointed to the committee January 1st. Served on the CREP committee several years back. Been fishing around the topsoil recreational side very avidly for almost the last 30 years.
Thanks, sir. We're just working our way around the table.
Ken Sigler, Hubert, North Carolina, commercial fisherman for 50+ years.
Sam Boyce, live here in Wilmington. I'm representing recreational fishing.
Pete Lee, Ocean Isle Beach, live on the inlet, native of Brunswick County, own Sloat Inlet Bait Company.
My name is Laura Lucas. I'm on the advisory committee. I'm new this year. My background is in estuary biology, more so crabs, crustacean, crustacean shrimp, and whatnot. My dad was a commercial fisherman, so it's really important for me, the fisheries and management.
Thank you. We'll introduce our two DMF biologists here too.
Yep, I'm Jeffrey Dobbs. I'm an FMP coordinator for the division. I work at the headquarters office.
And I'm Dan Zaff. I'm also an FMP coordinator with the division based out of the Morehead City office.
And Tom, you want to give it a try again? Introduce yourself real quick.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, if you can hear me, I'm Tom Smith. I have served on this committee since its inception, and prior to that, I was on the Inland Advisory Committee since the year 2000, and I was the representative for the Sea Grant FRGs back when that was going on. And I got on originally as, I guess I was a hybrid person because I was a recreational fisherman, but also financed a lot of seafood industry on the East and Gulf Coast. So I had knowledge of the industry that way and financing a lot of large seafood packers, producers, wholesalers, you name it. So I live in Weddington, North Carolina, which is near Charlotte. I won't claim Charlotte, but I'm near there. And I am the mayor pro tem of Charlotte. So that's me.
Thanks, Tom. Mayor Pro Tem of Weddington, right?
That's it. I seem to be vice everything.
Also want to recognize Mr. Sammy Corbett, who's here tonight, and he's currently the chair of the Marine Fisheries Commission, and so he's here in attendance for at least part of the meeting this evening. Thank you for being here, Sammy.
Thank you, Rick.
I
can say I was on the first Southern with Tom, and Fred and I co-chaired this committee for a long time. They've been on here as long as I can remember too. And I'm happy to have the new people on here that we put on not long ago. And I hope you all enjoy it and hope we can get a lot of knowledge from it.
We first thing on the agenda is just to vote on the agenda and then approve the minutes from the April meeting. So the agenda tonight is we'll have some opportunities for public comment. We'll have some opportunities right at the beginning for that. We can also take public comment at different periods. I'll ask the folks that are here from the public in a minute if they want to make comment now, or if they want to wait until a little bit later. So the agenda after that will be just to hear an update from the division staff on fishery management plan status. So an overview of the status of some of the adopted FMPs. And then basically just having a roundtable discussion on items related to those FMPs, particularly ones that are relevant to us here in the southern region of the state. And then maybe some other issues from AC members before we adjourn. So it'll be a fairly open discussion. So can we get a motion to approve the agenda? Second, do we have a motion to approve the agenda from Richard and then a second from Ken? All in favor of the agenda? Anyone opposed? The approval of the minutes from the April 8th meeting, Jesse had sent sort of a transcript and a video from most of that meeting. So I don't know if people had a chance to watch some of that, listen to some of the discussion that we had when we had the meeting last spring, but those were posted. I listened to most of it. So obviously if it's a video, it's a video. It wasn't doctored in my opinion, so it's good. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the April meeting? No. Okay.
I'll say.
Sam and Ken made the motion, Sam seconded it. All in favor of approval of the April minutes?
Yeah.
So there's some members of the public here, and I want to give you the opportunity, if you choose to make any public comments, you can make some public comment to us now. We're also then going to have a presentation from the division staff, and it's not a long presentation, and so you could save some comments if you choose after those. And then we're also going to have a roundtable discussion, and it's been, part of our practice recently to allow some public comment and some engagement during that discussion. So any members of the public that would wish to speak right now? Okay, seeing none. So we'll move forward. Jesse said he wanted to give us an update on some issues or some updates on the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan, and then we'll move on to their presentation.
Yeah, just very briefly, I just wanted to provide a very, very basic overview of the 2026 edition of the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan, or CHIP as we call it. I do want to say I'm not the habitat expert at the division. So unfortunately, if you have any in-depth questions or anything like that, I probably wouldn't be the best person to answer them. Charlie Deaton is kind of the leader of the CHIP team at the division. He's going to be giving a presentation on March 18th, so next Wednesday, to the Habitat and Water Quality AC. If you're interested in learning more about the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan and what we're planning for 2026, I'd highly recommend watching that presentation. It'll be at the Central District office in Morehead City. You're welcome to come in person. We also stream it on YouTube, so you can go to the Division of Marine Fisheries website, find the link to that, or I'm happy to send it to anybody that would like to listen to that discussion. So first, I'll just very briefly talk about what the CHIP is. The CHIP is a creation of the 1997 Fisheries Reform Act. That act requires 5-year updates to the plan, and it tasks DEQ staff, so Department of Environmental Quality staff from the Division of Marine Fisheries, the Division of Coastal Management, and the Division of Water Resources to participate in the plan. Though really most of the time we include additional divisions as well as external stakeholders. The CHIP also requires approval not just by the Marine Fisheries Commission, it also requires approval by the Coastal Resources Commission and the Environmental Management Commission. All 3 of those commissions have to approve the CHIP for it to be adopted. So we're currently in the very early part of drafting the 2026 CHIP. The basic framework that I'll talk a little bit about today was developed through internal division scoping meetings and refined with input from the CHIP team, as well as the CHIP steering committee, which the CHIP steering committee is made up of 2 members from the Marine Fisheries Commission, 2 members from the Environmental Management Commission, and 2 members from the Coastal Resources Commission. So like the 2021 CHIP, the 2026 CHIP will serve as an amendment. This makes it the 2nd amendment to the 2016 CHIP base plan. So priorities and actions from the 2016 as well as the 2021 CHIP plans remain active, and most of the issues that we'll be looking at in 2026 will actually just build upon previous CHIP priorities. So the 4 basic chapters that we're proposing for the 2026 CHIP are ecosystem-based management, SAV protection and restoration, planning for wetland changes in the coming decades, and lastly, community engagement for habitat protection. If you're interested in learning any more about each one of those, again, Charlie Deaton, best person to reach out with questions. We also have a presentation that Charlie did back in November. I think I sent it out to the ACs after that meeting, but if anybody would like the link to that presentation again, I'd be more than happy to send it out. So for the timeline for the chip moving forward, DMF staff will be developing the 4 issue papers that'll make up that chip, along with partners across the Department of Environmental Quality. And we'll be discussing those with the chip team as well as the chip steering committee in the next few months. We're aiming to have a complete draft of the chip done by the late summer. And that way the Marine Fisheries Commission, the Coastal Resources Commission, and the Environmental Management Commission can then send that draft chip out for public comment and advisory committee review. And then hopefully in November of 2026 is when the Marine Fisheries Commission would actually vote on final adoption of the 2026 amendment to the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan. And with that, like I say, if anybody has any, Sam?
Just what, I guess, what drives it to be an amendment versus an update? Like what, just to remind me what, like.
That's a very good question, and Charlie Deaton would be able to answer it way better than me.
So, yeah.
More in general.
16, where they kind of created a new version of the plan, and then since then, it was amended in 21, and this will be another amendment, but like, yeah, what triggered, it sounded like something bigger happened in 2016, and what triggered that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not certain. Charlie Deaton or maybe Zach Harrison, the H&E section chief, would be.
Maybe it's more of a general question, like for all of these FMPs, what drives it to be a major update versus an amendment? Like,
So for FMPs, Jeff and Dan would be the perfect people to talk about that.
So, so typically, if we're not going to address anything that's not already outlined in the plan, like the plans, you'll see that we'll do some things that don't open the plan, like using adaptive management. That's already written into the framework of the plan. But if we want to change some of the management in there that we don't already have authority to do within the plan, or we want to outline an issue, that's when we do amendment versus just, we call it an update, but there's a 5-year review cycle.
Mm-hmm.
That cycle comes up. Every year, we're looking at every one of these plans. And when that 5-year cycle comes up, we'll look at it, we'll say, is there anything that we need to change in here? Is there any issues that need to be addressed in this plan? And if so, then we'll do an amendment. If there's anything in the interim where we need to take immediate action as a stopgap measure, that would be like a supplement. And then there's some like other types of changes we've done, like revisions and things like that. That gets into the weeds, but mainly an amendment is just if we're addressing a major issue that would cause a change in the plan.
but does it ever go back where you just completely scrap the plan? So it's not an amendment. It's like,
So when we say an amendment to the plan,
It is.
it's not like an addendum, like some added material. Every time we do an amendment,
okay,
the plan starts from scratch. So
Okay.
that base plan will be all updated, new information with current economic, fisheries, stock assessment, stock status information.
Okay.
And then the issue papers will all be, typically be a novel investigation. Sometimes we'll update an issue paper. Looking back at like flounder, we've looked at the oscillated versus like separating out the oscillated fish. Well, in Amendment 5, we're looking into that again to maybe give us some more options to have single species or oscillated flounder management.
okay.
So in that sense, some of that stuff is just being updated, but typically it's a completely new plan that we're starting pretty much from scratch.
Other questions for Jesse or for the staff on the chip amendments? Okay. Thanks, Jesse.
Yes.
So we can move forward with the overview of the FMP status update from you guys, just to provide that to the committee, and then that will kick off our discussion.
Give me 1 second to share this. Sorry.
All right. So we already introduced ourselves, but, again, my name is Dan Zaff, I'm one of the FMP coordinators based on the Morehead City office, and Jeff Dobbs, the other FMP coordinators here as well, and he's also based out of the Morehead City office. So while part of our role is coordinating development of FMPs, that's actually not the entirety of our role as FMP coordinators. Once an FMP is adopted by the commission, the work doesn't end there. In reality, it's just beginning. Essentially, our role is to work closely with species leads and other division staff to coordinate not only development of state FMPs, but also implementation. So in other words, we help ensure management strategies adopted in FMPs are implemented, particularly when implementation occurs over time, not just immediately when an FMP is adopted. So tonight, we're going to provide you with an update on some recently adopted FMPs with ongoing implementation steps and a status update for plans currently under review. And if anybody listened to the commission meetings in November or February, this information that we're presenting tonight is similar to what was presented from them at that meeting, at those meetings. And the internet's a little slow, so there's a little bit of a lag in slides, so that'll slow us down, so it'll be all right. So we'll start the presentation by outlining implementation of adopted management strategies for eastern oyster, hard clam, southern flounder, estuarine striped bass, and spotted sea trout. And then we'll finish with updates on southern flounder, red drum, and the kingfish's plan, which are currently under review.
So Amendment 5 to the Eastern Oyster FMP was adopted in May of last year. The plan selected a three-tiered approach that balanced the value of oysters as both a fishery resource and habitat for other species. Development of deep water oyster recovery areas, or DORAs, prioritizes the habitat value of oysters. The updated Culch-supported harvest strategy was designed to balance the fishery and habitat value of oysters, while the rotational harvest sites prioritized the fishery value of oysters. Since adoption, the division has been working to implement the strategies in the FMP. Sonar surveys were completed for the entirety of both DORAs, scuba surveys were completed in the Neuse River, and scuba monitoring will resume this spring to collect oyster densities within the Pamlico DORA. Ideally, these reefs can be surveyed multiple times until the next FMP cycle, but staffing availability may limit the number of surveys. Culch-supported harvest season lengths are determined through pre- and mid-season sampling informed by industry input. Commercial fishermen helped identify sampling locations to ensure we were assessing areas actively used by the fleet. Initial season lengths were set based on preseason sampling with the ability to extend but not reduce season length, providing harvesters with greater certainty of the season length. Mid-season sampling sites identified by fishermen showed that abundance of legal-size oysters was high enough to extend the season in several management. Using the decision framework in Amendment 5, the division extended the mechanical harvest season in Hyde, Neuse, and Pamlico, in some cases by up to 5 weeks. Through Proclamation SF7 2025, areas that had already reached their maximum allowable season lengths were not extended further, and Northern Dare sampling showed that no extension was warranted. Further conversations with commercial fishermen reported that legal oyster abundance remained high through the end of the season in Long Shoal, Middleton, Wysocking, and the Great Narrows Island area. The third tier is rotational harvest culch sites, which prioritizes fishery value on deep water 10-acre planted sites. These rotational sites were established in Proclamation SF4 2025 and remained open for the entirety of the mechanical season, providing additional harvest opportunities while reinforcing the division's long-term culch planning investments. Overall, this season demonstrated that Amendment 5 is working as intended, integrating habitat protection, culch planting, and industry collaboration to expand harvest opportunities when the resource supports it, while maintaining protections for long-term sustainability. As a reminder, Amendment 3 to the hard clam FMP was developed and adopted by the MFC at the same time as the oyster plan due to overlap in management. The plan implemented a 3-year phase out of mechanical clam harvest fishery due to concerns over its negative effects on habitat, significant effort to enforce, and waning participation. However, the provision allowing mechanical clam harvest in conjunction with maintenance dredging ended immediately. Upon adoption of the plan, or ended immediately upon adoption of the plan and will no longer be permitted. Per Amendment 3, the mechanical clam harvest season opened by proclamation on December 8th, 2025, and will close on March 31st, 2026. The fishery will be reopened annually in December for 2 more years and will close after the 2027-2028 season. Vision staff have begun the process of amending the applicable rules to formalize the changes for consistency with the plan. Support for the division to develop a method to quantify recreational harvest of shellfish was adopted as part of both the Eastern Oyster and Hard Clam amendments. The division has formed a work group and is working through initial steps. However, legislative change may be needed to accomplish this.
Question. If I could.
What would you guys prefer? Do you want to do the whole thing and then do clarifying questions in the end? Why don't we do that? Why don't we just do a presentation and then just come back to, you can do one, go back to each one.
Good.
Yeah, I think because there's some tie-ins,
Yeah.
some continuations. So, the division is in the process of implementing a portion of Amendment 4 to the Southern Flounder FMP. Amendment 4 management strategy allows for a spring oscillated recreational flounder season, which includes Gulf and summer flounder. This season is limited to the ocean using hook and line piers. The spring season was included in the plan to provide recreational fishermen with opportunity to harvest summer and Gulf flounder during a time when they are less likely to catch a southern flounder. As I'm sure you're aware, this season was never utilized in Amendment 3 due to concerns for quota overages during previous fall seasons and the possibility of anglers mistakenly harvesting southern flounder. This season is now feasible given the recent sector allocation shift in Amendment 4 to 50-50. However, North Carolina cannot open a spring season for summer flounder, which is jointly managed by the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council and Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. These entities require recreational summer flounder regulations remain status quo in 2026 and 2027 based on harvest estimates compared to the recreational harvest limit and the stock's biomass estimate compared to the biomass target. This means that North Carolina's recreational summer flounder season in 2026 and 2027 must align with the fall flounder season. Based on this, the division has opened a 2-week Gulf flounder only recreational season for March 9th, 22nd of this year. The opening is limited to ocean waters only from the north end of Portsmouth Island to the South Carolina border to limit catch of summer and southern flounder. Harvest is limited to hook and line and will be held to a minimum size of 15 inches total length and a bag limit of 1 fish per person per day.
So moving on to striped bass. Amendment 2 to the striped bass FMP was jointly developed by the division and the Wildlife Resources Commission, and it was adopted in November of 2022. The goal of Amendment 2, which is paraphrased on the slide, is to manage estuarine striped bass fisheries to achieve self-sustaining populations that provide sustainable harvest based on science-based decision-making processes. And if biological and/or environmental factors prevent a self-sustaining population, then alternate management strategies will be implemented that provide protection for and access to the resource. The adopted Amendment 2 management strategy for the Tar, Pamlico, and Neuse rivers included continuation of the no possession measure, which was implemented with adoption of Supplement A in 2019. The Amendment 2 Adaptive Management Framework states that in 2025, data through 2024 will be reviewed to determine if populations are self-sustaining and if sustainable harvest can be determined. In addition, the approved motion to adopt included language to maintain the gill net prohibition through 2024 to allow for assessment of its performance. And this was the gill net prohibition that was upstream of the ferry lines in the Neuse and Tar, Pamlico rivers. So the data review prescribed by Amendment 2 Adaptive Management Framework was completed, and the division striped bass elites presented results to the MFC in August 2025. In short, the analysis concluded the harvest and gillnet closures have been ineffective at increasing adult abundance, expanding the age structure, and promoting recruitment, and that the Tar Pamlico and Neuse River striped bass stocks are currently not sustainable. Consistent with the amendment to goal and the adaptive management framework, Division and Wildlife Resources Commission staff developed harvest management measures that provide protection for and access to the resource. In November 2025, the Division Striped Bass Leads presented information to the Marine Fisheries Commission about management changes that will occur for striped bass in the Tar Pamlico and Neuse Rivers in 2026. The changes, which will be implemented via DMF Proclamation Authority and WRC temporary rulemaking, include only allowing recreational and commercial harvest upriver of the gillnet distance from shorelines in the Tar Pamlico and Neuse Rivers, which are indicated on this map by the blue lines. And then harvest will only be allowed from April 1 through April 30th. And this is being done to limit harvest of Albemarle Roanoke stock striped bass that use the lower portions of these rivers during certain times of the year. The recreational and commercial possession limit will be 1 fish per person per day, with a harvest slot limit of 18 to 22 inches, or 1 fish greater than 27 inches total length. So moving on to spotted sea trout, Amendment 1 to the spotted sea trout FMP was adopted by the Marine Fisheries Commission in March 2025. Adopted recreational management included a 14 to 20 inch slot limit with an allowance for 1 fish over 26 inches and a 3 fish bag limit. Adopted commercial management included a Saturday to Sunday harvest closure from January to September and a Saturday to Monday harvest closure from October to December. This management is intended to reduce harvest and end overfishing of the spotted sea trout stock. Additional management included formalizing commercial stop net fishery management in the FMP and adopting the adaptive management framework with the caveat that adaptive management measures for sustainable harvest must be brought to the commission for review prior to implementation. And Amendment 1 management also extended cold stun harvest closures by 15 days through June 30th and adopted the cold stun adaptive management framework. So at the May 2025 MFC meeting, our spotted sea trout lead, Lucas Penzinger, provided details of a significant cold stun event that occurred in January 2025 prior to adoption of Amendment 1. In response to the cold stun, the division issued a proclamation on January 22nd, 2025, closing the spotted sea trout fisheries through June 15th. With the adoption of Amendment 1 in March, the division issued a proclamation on April 8th, 2025, extending the closure through June 30th. After a delay of more than 3 months, the Wildlife Resources Commission followed suit and closed the spotted sea trout fishery in their jurisdiction from May 2nd through June 30th using temporary rulemaking processes. And then in accordance with Amendment 1 management, the fisheries reopened via proclamation on July 1st, 2025, at which time changes to the recreational size and bag limit and the commercial closures were implemented. Once again, the Wildlife Resources Commission followed suit and implemented Amendment 1 management measures by July 1 via temporary rule. Amendment 1 stop net fishery management was incorporated into proclamation when that fishery opened on October 15th, 2025. So a significant cold stun event occurred again in late January, early February 2026. And the recreational and commercial fisheries were closed by proclamation on February 6, 2026. And per Amendment 1, the fisheries will reopen July 1, 2026. WRC has initiated temporary rulemaking to close spotted sea trout harvest in their jurisdiction, with the earliest effective date being April 6th. So that'll be a 2-month delay from when the fisheries were closed by the division. The division spotted sea trout leads will provide updates to the MFC about the 2025 and 2026 cold stun events and provide any recommendations about the need for additional conservation measures as the data becomes available.
All right, I will now transition to discussing plans that are currently under review. So here's the FMP review schedule showing the review of the Southern Flounder, Red Drum, and Kingfish's FMPs are currently underway. As a reminder, Amendment 4 to the Southern Flounder FMP was adopted in August of 2025, and Amendment 5 is underway to further address the requests from the MFC. We'll now take a quick look at each of these three plans. Our first plan under review is Southern Flounder. The division is working to draft Southern Flounder Amendment 5 now. Earlier this month, the DEQ Secretary approved broadening the scope of Amendment 5 to allow harvest levels to be changed in response to planned state-level stock assessments and interim indicator analyses. Solicitation for FMP Advisory Committee membership will occur later this month. Next, the MFC chairman will appoint the AC from the list of interested candidates. The FMP AC workshop is scheduled to occur over 3 days in early June, where the advisory committee will review and provide input on content and management options included in Draft Amendment 5. The division will then work to incorporate the AC input into a second draft. This draft will be brought to the MFC at their November 2026 business meeting to approve it for public and AC comment, with final adoption scheduled for May of 2027. Just as a side note, Charlton Godwin has replaced Holly White as a co-lead flounder. Scheduled review of the state Red Drum FMP began in 2025. The division will convene a plan development team to begin exploring potential management issues. We will keep the MFC updated throughout this process.
And so last but not least, Kingfishes. The scheduled review of the Kingfishes FMP began in 2025. As part of the FMP development, our species leads are currently evaluating available fishery independent, dependent, and biological data to examine abundance trends and age and length structure. Results from this analysis will inform any potential management changes that may be proposed in Amendment 1 to the Kingfishes FMP. And the results of the analysis are tentatively scheduled to be presented to the MFC later in 2026. In addition to potential management changes, the data evaluation will inform potential methods for monitoring the stock moving forward. Amendment 1 will replace or remove the current kingfish management triggers, and this change is needed because of survey changes limiting the usefulness of current triggers to inform kingfish population trends. And the division will plan to keep the MFC informed of progress as we move through this process. I'll finish by mentioning that review of the blue crab and bay scallop FMPs will begin later this year. A benchmark stock assessment for blue crab is currently underway, with completion tentatively anticipated for later this year. At that time, the division will consider whether Amendment 3 adaptive management or the scheduled FMP review, which will take at least 2 years, will be used to address assessment results. Contact information for Jeff and I is on the screen. Again, our role is to work with species leads and other division staff to coordinate development and implementation of FMPs. If you have species-specific questions, a list of division species leads and their contact information is maintained on our website, which can be accessed using the QR code on the screen. And so we'll take any questions.
Thank you. Daniel and Jeff, we appreciate the update on all the FMPs. So questions from the committee?
I had a couple of questions. If you go back to the clam FMP.
Sorry if I'm making anybody dizzy.
You said something to the effect of you didn't have an ability to report. What would be the problem with reporting on the app that's already be in production
Well,
for landings on clams, shellfish?
we didn't say that was an issue with clams. Maybe you're talking about the recreational.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's not required, as part of the legislation. There's only 4 recreational.
Yeah, it's 5 recreational species that's in the legislation for mandatory harvest reporting, red drum, spotted sea trout, flounder, so multiple flounder species would be included in that. Striped bass and weak fish are the 5 that the legislation, that the General Assembly chose to put in.
Red flounder included in, it doesn't say specifically southern.
Yeah, it's just flounder.
Just flounder.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to maybe clarify what we're trying to do here. So in order for us to extrapolate what is being caught, we need to know the universe of harvesters. Right now, we don't have that. You don't need any sort of license to harvest shellfish. So it could be everyone in the state, or it could be a select number. We know it's somewhere like less than everyone, but probably more than the number of people that fill out the preference survey that we used to have. So we're just trying to get a known universe, and from that, we can estimate how many people.
Can't you do that same? I mean, you calculate landings by extrapolating how many trips were taken by individuals during the year. So if you get 1 year's data on that app for clams, if we could add clams to that regulation, and you could get that 1 year data, then you'd have some synopsis of how many were fishing and then project that out from there.
Yeah, I think that would require legislative change, which would be a lengthy process. But if we wanted to institute a license or permit to track that, it would as well. So, I mean, that is a direction we could.
How are you going to put a license on a recreational fisherman? He's already got a license.
Yeah, like an endorsement or a shellfish license or
I don't know, license to harvest, something along those lines. Kind of like what you're doing with the recreational crab traps.
that's more to use the commercial gear. I think you're talking about the recreational commercial gear license where you can have 5. This would be mainly just if you automatically, we took every CREFL folder and we assumed that was the universe. A lot of people don't harvest shellfish. So we would have either a permit or something that you would need to opt into with a nominal charge so that people wouldn't just automatically opt into it and artificially inflate the universe of harvesters. And that would give us a better idea of how many people are actually participating in the fishery. If you're willing to spend a couple bucks to add that on, you probably are going to go and harvest shellfish.
It's an endorsement in a lot of states.
Yeah.
Currently. Well, I know it's not been a great winter for fishing, but what's been the adoption rate so far with the mandatory reporting?
So as far as mandatory harvest reporting goes, I gave a very short presentation at the Marine Fisheries Commission meeting in February about that. For December and January, we had somewhere around a little over 1,000 submissions. I can't remember off the top of my head the number like the number of spotted sea trout, the number of red drum, the number of flounder and everything that was submitted. But the kind of initial submissions we got, like that first week after the effective date, like the first week of December, we got a fair bit of joke information, a lot of fake names, and obviously not correct information. After the first week, we did see that behavior kind of fall off, and what we've seen reported seems to be a little bit more in line with what we would expect people to be harvesting this time of year, spotted sea trout in January and February, or in December and January, as well as a handful of red drum and lesser amounts. But we had a few flounders submitted still after that first week. I don't know if they were people lying or people who decided to report harvest during a closed season anyway, which would be surprising if somebody did that, but we like honest people, even if they're kind of not being honest. So that's good. As far as the actual number of people or the rate of adoption of mandatory harvest reporting, and talking with Marine Patrol a little bit, and Chris or Garland, y'all are welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. I think a lot of the people that we're seeing on the water still aren't certain that mandatory harvest reporting is required yet. So the focus that the division has right now in regards to that program is really just getting the word out. It's just making sure that people know this is a requirement now. We're still in the like no penalty phase of it. The legislation was phased in over a period of 3 years. So starting December 1st, 2025, if you don't report, you just get a verbal warning. Starting December 1st, 2026, if you don't report, you just get a written warning. And then starting December 1st, 2027 is when the actual penalty kicks in. If you don't report, you'll get a $35 fine. That does include court costs though, which I think are like 180 some dollars right now. So it's a little over $200 total. And it's important to note if you're found to be a repeat violator, that could ultimately end up with the revocation of your license privileges. But yeah, it's still very much just trying to get the word out to people.
Does the app take into consideration a license number for recreational license?
So one of the questions, the form that we have that people submit now for their recreational trips for those 5 species, it does have a question if you have a fishing license or not. If you select yes, you have a fishing license, you have to put in your WRC ID number, which basically your fishing license number. There's a lot of recreational fishermen in North Carolina that aren't required to have a fishing license. If you're under 16, you're not required to have one. If you're fishing with a charter captain who has a blanket license, you might not have your own fishing license. If you're fishing on an ocean fishing pier with a blanket license, you're not required to have one. So that's why we had the yes or no question for the fishing license. So you can select no, you don't have a fishing license, and then you have to put in your name and your zip code.
Your name didn't match up with a WRC number, then you got a problem.
Well, so you're not required to put both of them. You're just required to put one of them. So if you have a fishing license, you're required to put your.
They're required to put the number down. I'm saying if you don't have a record for that person that's having a license, what's the course then?
Oh, so you mean like if you said yes, you have a license, and then for your number, you just made up a number to put there, like 97460.
Put any number in there.
So in order to fill out the form, if you select yes, you have to put in a number. But currently, we don't have the ability in the moment anyway to compare that license number that's entered against the license database of active licenses. So theoretically, anyway, someone could put in a fake number for their WRC ID number there and submit that form. We, on the back end, after the fact, we could then compare those WRC ID numbers against known license numbers and tell that that was an erroneous entry.
Is there a penalty for that?
The legislation itself does not contain any penalty about fake reporting. I believe there is some other rules that contain some penalties for submitting fake data, though.
That would be fraud. Fraud statute.
Just remind, at what point do you have to report the landing? Is it when the fish is in the boat, or is it back at the dock? Or?
It's when you've completed your fishing trip. So the rule actually defines harvest as, say, if you're fishing from a boat, it's when your boat reaches the shore or a structure connected to the shore. So basically, you go out fishing in a boat, harvest a red drum. As soon as you get back to the dock, that's when you're required to report.
It's on the last letter you sent out, that was sent out by the division. For commercial, there was a requirement of $100 license for flounder for not for sale, but you had to, if you didn't have a fish house, in other words, I live in a community, the closest fish house that's going to buy fish is 25 miles away. So I've got to carry the fish 25 miles down the road to a dealer. If he doesn't want to fill out the trip ticket, then I'm in the bucket somehow. Is there some way we can get an app for commercials to report for their catch they're going to keep and consume for themselves, an app for that?
So that's something we've heard a lot. There's been a lot of interest in that, and it's absolutely something that the division is exploring. The way the timeline for this legislation, unfortunately, we weren't able to develop a like fully functional, robust reporting platform for both recreational and commercial fisheries before the implementation, the effective date of this legislation. So we currently are exploring some way for fishermen themselves to actually report their harvest to not have to go through the trip ticket program. Unfortunately, that process will likely take a couple of years before we can
That's another $200 commercial fisherman.
Do you mean like if you want to become a dealer yourself so you can submit? You would have to purchase a dealer's license in order to do that.
That's what I'm working about, I guess. That doesn't hardly seem fair. I mean, there needs to be some kind of voluntary Whether it's a paper form that we can fill out, just like we do for when we're landing clams, we got to fill out a paper when we land with clams before we get to the fish house, and the tag has to be in the bag. We could have some kind of situation like that, same thing with flounder. If we're not gonna sell them, we fill the paper out, mail it in, here it is.
Yeah, we hear you, Ken. Like, we are working towards some type of fisherman level report, and that's the plan. Unfortunately, with the mandatory harvest report and legislation when it was passed, we weren't given any additional positions at the division. We were given a one-time allocation of $5 million, but that's not recurring money. That's just one-time $5 million, and that's it. And that's to develop the both the commercial and the recreational reporting platforms for that. For mandatory harvest reporting
Still didn't get developed.
as well as any other outreach or anything to do that. We're currently working with, I believe, Bluefin Data to work on that fisherman level reporting app.
I tried that and when I was a crab dealer. I tried to report the fish that I was catching in my traps to keep for myself. They said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. So it's catch-22.
I'm curious, Ken, do you harvest, like when you go out fishing, do you typically harvest only for personal consumption on a trip, or is it like you go out, you harvest some fish to sell?
I come back and I got automatic trip tickets. Fill out trip tickets, make them mail, or to get logged in the end of each month.
So I believe trip tickets do have a code for personal consumption. So like if you're keeping
Now, they told me I couldn't use that. I tried that 10 years ago.
Randy, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but you can use the personal consumption. That's the hope is that people will use that personal consumption code to report their personal consumption harvest. If someone told you not to use it,
What we're trying to do, isn't it?
yeah. Mm-hmm. If someone told you 10 years ago not to use that code, I mean, obviously I don't know the circumstances around that, but if you're currently keeping fish for personal consumption using your commercial fishing license, we very much want you to use that personal consumption.
What it came down to, it was a crab trip ticket, but I couldn't report fish on it.
Why can't you report fish on it?
Because that's what they said.
It's got one side of your crab trip tickets has a multiple list of fish, flounders. on it.
Exactly.
And then there's two places at the bottom. If there's a fish you've caught that's not on there, you can take the number off the other trip ticket and write it in. As you can ask Brandy, they see it on my trip tickets all the time. They probably pull their hair out, especially like right now, crabbing in the ocean. There's nowhere on the crab ticket for ocean harvest of crabs. So I have to come down to the bottom and I have to write 0 to 3 miles south of Cape Hatteras and my crabs with the number code that is mixed crab, and never had a problem. I've been doing it for 20 years, and it goes, and there's a trip ticket lady right there.
They told me I could not report, and it was flounder and red drum both.
And Ken,
Red drum on the crab.
On the crab ticket.
we would be happy to get you in touch with the commercial port agent for Onslow County. I can't remember off the top of my head which port agent that is that covers Onslow, because they kind of go around in weird ways to me.
I'm not a dealer any longer. I'm just telling you from the past. Currently not a dealer.
Well, it's changed now. You can do it now.
Okay.
You had a question?
Well, yeah, maybe this has been addressed in previous years. Is there a lot of overlap between being a dealer and a commercial fisherman, or like, is it completely separate, or are there a lot of commercial fishermen that are also dealers?
So I don't know the number exactly off the top of my head. Brandy might, but there is a good number of overlap. There are a good number of fishermen dealers, yes.
I wonder if there could be a voucher system, even if you are a commercial fisherman, to getting a discount on being a dealer too, but.
Like all stuff that could be explored.
So I'm Brady Salmon. I'm the section chief for the license and statistics section. So our section has 4 main programs. So the trip ticket program, the commercial side of things, the recreational statistics program, and then the economics program, and then the license program. And so, yes, there is overlap between commercial licensed fishermen and seafood dealers. We have about, maybe around 700 licensed seafood dealers. And then we have around like 2,000 active, licensed commercial fishing licenses.
Okay.
So definitely way more fishermen than dealers, but they do overlap.
Have they thought about offering a voucher for?
So getting these licenses is all written in statute. And so in order for us to modify or change like how that happens or how much money they or discounts cost, it would have to go through legislation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wanted to take a moment and just see if any of the members of the public that are here might just want to issue any public comment at this point in time. We're probably just going to merge from our question and answer session because I feel like our roundtable discussion is also going to include probably questions maybe for Dan and Jeffrey too. So I think we're just going to kind of roll into that. Is there anyone that wants to make any public comment at this point? Or we'll hold it until a little bit later. Anybody want to make a comment now? Not seeing any. Okay. So we can just roll into our roundtable discussion, continued questions and answers with Dan and Jeffrey, because I imagine this discussion, because the agenda states that the committee should discuss items related to the FMPs that are under review or will be under review this year. I imagine we probably have a little bit of latitude to discuss FMPs maybe outside of this year's review process, because the ones that you mentioned that were under review now or will be under review this year, right, are southern flounder, striped bass, or no?
So currently under review, we have Southern Flounder Amendment 5, we have red drum, we have kingfishes.
Kingfishes, those three.
And then opening this year is blue crab and bay scallop.
Opening up. Okay.
Fred, when I put this together to do this way, it's not meant that you just got to go on those top ones.
Okay.
You talk about spots, you talk about the new regulations on Atlantic Bonita, Palms Alport, whatever they want to talk, whatever that's on their mind that they want to talk about.
Okay.
That's what I want to talk about. That's what I want to get back to us, what the public is feeling about what's happening in the commission.
And Fred, if you don't mind, I'll just briefly kind of talk about a little bit about Atlantic Bonito management and what happened at the previous commission meeting in regards to that. I sent out an email to all the advisory committee members a week or two ago, kind of just an update about what happened at the February commission meeting. And that's something that I hope to be able to continue to do after each meeting. I think that's valuable to inform the committee members on kind of what happened at each meeting. But one of the major things that happened at the February commission meeting was the commission selected their preferred language for a proposed rule for Atlantic Bonito management. There was an Atlantic Bonito management issue paper that the division developed at the request of the commission. I believe back in 2024, there was a motion that was made to basically develop some proposed language that mirrored the sheep's head rule, which is basically given the division director broad proclamation authority over the management of that species, to develop some proposed language to mirror that rule for Atlantic Bonito. And then at the August commission meeting last year, there was another motion to include some language for a 5-fish recreational bag limit in regards to Bonito. So in February, this past February, the commission selected the option that they wanted for that preferred language, and they ultimately selected what was option 4. That would put a 5-fish bag limit recreationally in permanent rule. So if that rule ultimately gets adopted by the commission, upon the effective date of the rule, there would be a 5-fish bag limit for the recreational fishery. It also included broad proclamation authority to the division director over the recreational and commercial sectors to set size limits, trip limits, seasons, area closures, a very, very broad authority to the division director. But one of the interesting things with every option that was presented in regards to Atlantic Bonito management is it's built in prior MFC consent before a proclamation would be issued. So if the commission ultimately adopts one of these options, what would happen is the division would basically say, okay, we looked at the data, we determined that the Atlantic Bonito fishery needs some additional management or some management changes. And we would put together what that would be, that proposed proclamation. And then we would go to the Marine Fisheries Commission at their next meeting and basically present that to them. And the Marine Fisheries Commission would then vote yes or no on that proclamation. If they voted no, that would basically kill the proclamation. It wouldn't be issued. If they voted yes, after the meeting, the division director would then issue that proclamation with those management changes. We kind of felt that was a really important thing to add, that prior MFC consent, because Atlantic Bonito is a relatively data poor species. We don't have a ton of information about Atlantic Bonito. We do have landings data, like commercial landings data, recreational landings data through MRIT, but unfortunately for a species like Bonito that is very kind of a short season, very, very impacted by the weather, it's kind of a pulse fishery a little bit. MRIT doesn't do a fantastic job of collecting data on fisheries like that. So the PSEs surrounding those estimates are kind of variable, and there is a little cause for concern with them when looking at landings of Bonito. So because of that, we really wanted to build that prior MFC consent in there. So with any proposed change, the public would have the opportunity to weigh in on that change at the commission meeting. It would show up on the agenda as an agenda item. The public would know about it. They could come to the commission meeting and comment on it. And the commission would listen to those comments and decide how to move forward. The email that I sent with the updates did link to the issue paper that talked about all four of the different options. If y'all are interested, I'm happy to talk a little bit about what each option is, but the commission did ultimately select the option 4. The next step in the process will be in the May commission meeting. The commission will vote on notice of text. That actually officially begins the rulemaking process. That would initiate a 60-day public comment period, and we would hold a public hearing so the public could provide input on those proposed rule, or that proposed rule. The commission would then, at their November meeting, receive the results of that public comment period and vote on final adoption in November.
So to be clear, then we do not have a 5-fish limit this season.
That's correct. Yeah. It would, the earliest effective date, if the commission actually ultimately selected that same language in November upon final adoption, because it does include unlawful language in that 5-fish bag limit portion of that rule, it is automatically subject to legislative review, which means once it's adopted, once the RRC actually approves that rule, the next legislative session, there are 30 legislative days that have to pass before it becomes effective. And that kind of provides the opportunity for a bill to be filed in the legislature, kind of disallowing that rule if, ultimately the General Assembly doesn't want it.
Mike, how do you feel about that? Your Starbucks guy.
For me personally, Sammy, I absolutely love the idea because they don't freeze well. I've tried everything to freeze them. They don't freeze well. It's a very good piece of sushi during the season. But honestly and truly, other than that, if you can't freeze them, why are you going to stack 50 on the deck? And if it's a limited population to begin with, I think 5 per person is way more than generous. I mean, honestly, for me personally, the only thing I'm going to do is this year I'm going to try to pickle some. But because, we get that long run, and I think they're a great fish, and it's a fun thing for my clients to do. It's a good fighting fish. It's a good eating fish. I have no problem with 5. I think 5 is more than fair. I wish we had better data to know what the general population of it was and whether, because some years we have dips where they show up for a day or two and then we don't see them anymore. They may catch them at the hook or they may catch them up north, but we don't really see them per se as much as they do. And then we have years where we're catching those little silver bullets, the little pink ones in August, right? While we're trolling for Spanish. So I wish we knew more about the population, but I think 5 is more than fair. I think it's.
What are other states doing?
There's a push now in the Northeast. Very hard to go ahead and start trying to get a handle on the population.
Let's put a regulation in effect, but they're not.
Because and I know Massachusetts was looking at one and some of those guys, and I think it's a situation where why not go ahead and get ahead of it before all of a sudden it's like a strike past and the noose and where the hell are they? You know, why not go ahead and get ahead of it now? And if you're gonna get ahead of it and be a conservationist, then let's conserve some stuff. And I mean, to me, 5 fish is more than, I mean, gosh knows.
I just wanted to know how you felt about
Yeah, I think it's great.
it. I knew I would get exactly how you felt about it if I had to.
And Mike, can you share how it is pickled once you try it? I'm very curious about that.
You understand what I'm saying? I have a honest to God serious vacuum sealer, like the chamber vacuum sealer. And I've tried everything to freeze that fish, but for some reason, as soon as you freeze it, it falls out. I don't know whether it breaks the cellular structure or not, but it is nasty.
There's a captain in Little River that has perfected the pickling.
See, is he pickling the bonita? Okay.
He just brought me some.
Okay. Well, the old Norwegian boys, that's what they did. And I noticed that some guys down south were doing it with blackfin. And I'm like, wait a minute, if you can do it with the blackfin, you can do it with the
It's worth the treat.
Okay. So,
How about just canning, regular canning?
same thing, can pickle, yeah.
I'd like to just mention something about the red drum. You got that study coming up. There was a recent tagging program that took place with satellite tags that was made available to the public to see where these redfish are breeder stock migrated through the Pamlico. Personally, I've probably spent over 1,000 hours in the Pamlico in shallow water chasing those red drum with fly rod. And it's taken me all those hours to find how those fish move and where they go, what tides, what slough they're going to hang out at. And to make that information public, to protect, our breeder stock, and then put it out there where they're at, where they're moving. Personally, I would share is a huge mistake. Mistake.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I will say, I believe with that satellite tagging program, it's not real-time tracking. There is a lag that they put in there for that exact reason. Although I do see your point about.
If you've spent hours I have.
if they're at Garbacon Shoals, they're at Garbacon Shoals.
I've caught tagged fish that was tagged, 7, 8 years ago that were showing up in the exact same place that they were tagged. That information was, out there, and those fish come back to the same areas. So just.
Yeah, I'll add, that satellite tagging project was a partnership with the Marine and Estuary Foundation and the division. The division provided the manpower basically to get those tags out, and the information has been shared with the public online through the Marine and Estuary Foundation.
That's what I'm saying, it's not a good idea.
No,
Yeah, no, I understand.
it shows where they're hanging out in the middle of the sound too, in the deep of the water. What time of day?
Let's go out there and shoot up some flares. They're over here.
Yeah, I've talked to those guys at the Estuary Foundation. I mean, at least the way that they explained to me is that certainly the data is not real time, but also the spatial resolution is not super fine, right? They're not trying to put the data out there so people can find those fish, but more to give the public a general idea of sort of what we're learning, about what they're learning at least about how those fish are moving and some life cycle issues. But
Is that going to be part of the drug FFP?
communicating that, to the Marine, the Marine and Estuarine Foundation is, primarily a recreational group, they're the ones that paid for those tags and partnered with the division. They've actually reached out to us about adding some species because they've spent money to create this platform to show these movements in real time. And we have not provided any of our data to that platform yet for fear of some of the same things that you've talked about. And so But I think having some good communication with that group about how that information is being shared is worthwhile.
Well, I think if there's gonna be cooperation, maybe there needs to be some guardrails on how that information is shared. I mean, I'm all about studying the fish and understanding what they do, but
Yeah,
You don't want to show them where the southern debris.
I don't. Now we've been working on sturgeon, which are endangered. People know where they are.
Speaking of those big drum, is that part of the FMP process to discuss that whole Pamlico fishery and everything else?
So, short answer is, it could be. We're gonna be having a scoping period in the next couple of months here. We're soliciting folks for what issues they want to see us address in the fishery. I do want to note that the state plan, the authority for managing red drum is with the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. They just finished up Amendment 2. That's why we had kind of delay on development of this plan. The results of that were we don't need any reductions in North Carolina. But we're trying to look at ways to maybe streamline the commercial side and get some input from the recreational side on how we can.
It would be nice maybe to think about some kind of, and I don't want to call it a limit, but we've got a lot of those big females in the sound, and you've seen it and I've seen it. On those days when the commission, all the fishermen are fishing for those big females, they're dying. The dead discard rate there jumps up through the roof. And a red drum is a hardy species. We know that from when Beckwith was harvesting them and throwing them in a net, letting them sit for 2 weeks and releasing them and they were still alive. They're a very hardy species. However, in July and August, when the water temperature is 85,
They get foul hooked.
and you stress that fish, he may swim, but he's not getting oxygen because of all the lactic acid buildup and everything else.
And I think we could definitely incorporate some best management practices for folks to, we could develop some guidelines.
Because it has gotten popular now. It's gone from, we used to do it at night.
Yep.
Then we did it dead bait at night. And then all of a sudden it was, well, okay, you can actually do it during the day. And now it's like everybody's throwing popping corks. When the popping corks aren't working, we're going to throw dead bait. When the dead bait's not working, we're going to, and it's exploded.
See it when I go to get gas. Yep, there's advertisement for, I don't know if it's a charter company or, can't remember, but when I'm pumping gas, they're talking about,
Trophy red drum in
bronze
the
days
Pamlico.
and I'm like, holy.
I don't know enough about their breeding population, but I'm pretty damn sure that that population out of the Pamlico is the population that comes out of Ocracoke and goes up and down the coast. And those fish are our breeding population here as well as up there. And that does concern me.
What would you do? Have an area closure by season?
I don't know. I don't know, but I think it's something we ought to really openly talk about because, you commercial guys aren't killing them. It's us. It's the recreational guys that are killing us.
Nets in the waters.
What's that?
Ain't no nets in the water.
I mean, it is the recreational guys that are killing them. And I mean, I hate to say that, but we all pound the table and talk about conservation, but a lot of times we rec guys don't look at ourselves. And this is one where we really probably need to think about, I don't want to say, hey, we're going to close it this date or this date, but it would be nice to have some kind of.
I mean, they're spawning between late July.
Oh yeah, that's all that white stuff you get on you when you pick them up.
And the water's is hot, the hottest it is all year. In August and September is peak spawning.
No, it depends if the eggs are buoyant or not.
So we do an assessment each year on the hatch that's in the sound, the redfish hatch.
Say that one more time.
We do an assessment every year on the hatch.
Just a juvenile survey.
Yeah, we do seines later into the fall. In terms of like ichthyoplankton surveys, we just have one at the Beaufort Bridge. We really would like to expand our larval and egg sampling.
You used to do it up on Adams Creek,
The
beach seine.
Oh, yeah, no, we still do, the beach seine still occurs. We have numerous sites in the.
It starts in September through November. They'll get fish, small as 20 millimeters and then, they're not settling into the estuarine habitats until they're probably like 6 or 7 millimeters, and then the seine will pick them up when they're 15.
But we do that every year, because that kind of gives us an assessment rate of how much.
Every,
It does, and that information is included when ASMFC does their stock assessments, which they just completed one. There's two stocks, there's a northern and southern stock. Likely that line is somewhere in North Carolina, but we typically just assign North Carolina to the northern stock. But our juvenile abundance survey and our adult surveys are all included in that. So hopefully it's.
And our surveys have all been good, even though the population is down just a little bit, right?
Yeah, the southern stock has some serious issues, but the northern stock is doing well. There are some concerning trends in the age structure and the catch rates, but.
I haven't seen a really,
Southern stock.
I haven't seen a really good, really strong year class in a little while. Like Red Drum tends to, you tend to see, like a periodic.
We were just talking about that. It's been about 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, there
This
hasn't
would
been,
be a 6-year class before they get to be 18, right?
yeah, because they're only in the slot for, most of the fish in the slot are 2-year-olds, and so you get some fast growing ones, and some young threes.
You get up 28 inches, there's some 4s and 5s.
Yeah, well, but 27 is the top of the slot. I mean, there might
And
be
there's
some
no
slow
push to
growing 4s, but not
increase that
10.
spot, right? There's, I mean,
No,
or increase the harvest, right?
Yeah,
Status quo.
our plan has to be compliant to the ASMFC's.
Is that why South Carolina just back theirs up to 1 fish?
Yeah, because they're in the southern stock, so they needed reductions in stock. North Carolina, we don't need any reductions, but with some concerning trends, some horse spawns. We might want to consider additional protections, but we're not required to do anything to stay in compliance with that.
But I think, Mike, your kind of suggestion to look at the adult red drum and that fishery that occurs in the late summer, early fall is exactly the type of input. I mean, I know Chairman Corbett left, but I think that's exactly what he had in mind for meetings like this, to provide input on what the committee members, what the commission would ultimately like to see kind of developed in these FMPs, so that I think that's exactly the type of input that we're looking for.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I said, I have no idea what the rule would be, and I don't even know if you could make a rule, but it would be something certainly to discuss, because we all know that 40-inch fish is 30, 35 years old, and here she is belly up in the middle of the Pamlico, and even if I stop and try to revive her, she ain't gonna make it. So I've lost 30, 35 years of, what's the term, fecund? So I've lost all those eggs.
Well, she might live to be 60.
So, and I've lost all those eggs. And with the popularity of it, if we keep doing it more and more, we only need to kill 10% before we start making a scratching.
Yeah, we'll end up in the same situation that Florida's in right now.
It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to put in new regulation. It could be an outreach and education program, best management practices. We could do best.
And Owen Lupton did that in the 90s, right? The 90s, early 2000s, the old Lupton rig where we were all shortened our leaders up so we didn't get back in the gill rakes and all that other stuff. And that's a law now, right? That's actually regulation. So
They killed that in the legislature.
No,
the Lupton rig's still
It's a Lupton rig, but circle hook is what I was referring to. I'm sorry. Killed circle hook.
Yes.
So in the Noose and tributaries to the Pamlico Sound, if you're fishing after 7 p.m. during this time period with a hook larger than a 4/0, it has to be the barb has to be mashed, has to be a fixed sinker, at least 3 ounces, and the leader can't be any longer than 6 inches.
Non-offset.
Yeah. But even without that regulation in place, I think Jeff is just right. I honestly think the adoption of the Owen Lupton rig really was driven by the community, not regulation.
3-4 foot leaders, and they were getting down in the gill rakes. Well, then you're in the process. Okay, let's cut the hook. Yeah. But you've already fought that fish for 30 minutes. So what's it done to the gill rakes while it's there lodged? And I mean, that just makes sense to me.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of how a properly run outreach and education campaign really can have real influence on community practices. Like, would love to have more examples of things that we've done like that.
The timing of just kind of starting to look at Red Drum stuff. They haven't put an AC, they're not at the point yet of putting an AC together for Red Drum yet.
Yeah, correct. We're
Probably later in the year.
we're a long way from that because we need to write the plan, but we will have a scoping period
Okay.
where we'll, right now, we're developing an internal list of issues that we've either noted ourselves or we've heard from the public. I mean, something like what you're saying is something we'll include in this list. Then we'll take it out and we'll scope it. And folks will have a chance to give us feedback on our list of options. Then we'll develop it. Okay.
Can we get a commercial bag limit? Like Virginia has 5 fish?
You're saying reduce the commercial trip limit?
Well, if that's what you want.
7 now.
7 now, I'm saying if, I'm talking without bycatch allowance. Just straight 5 fish.
Well, that was to keep it from being a targeted species.
Right. I don't have no problem with that, keep them targeted species. But if you're out there and you can't catch any, but you catch them anyway.
Yeah, I think the target species is definitely something we're gonna look at in this plan, because the reality is there's not much of a large mesh gillnet fishery left, and that's really what catches.
Well,
these
I
fish.
catch, it's large mesh, but I catch it in the mullet fishery too, was the primary source I was catching.
Yep.
But now I've got to have 50 pounds of mullets, even though I just caught 6 red drum. Can't have them on the boat, I got to throw them overboard. You know good and well what's gonna happen, so.
Well, I think the big concern there was discussion about, and I know this happens at New River, you've seen this happen too, is we're mullet fishing, quote unquote, and we're striking drums and trout's what we're doing. But we're mullet fishing. But we're striking drum and trout. And we know that because I'll sit there and watch them.
Yeah, you can't possess them unless you have the 50.
You're not supposed to.
So I do wanna just, like, this is very tentative, but it's looking like May or June, we'll have that scoping. On Red Drum. Yep. That's what.
It just say, I mean,
Public.
So it's the same thing in Virginia. Virginia, you've got a 3 fish limit.
But yeah.
Yeah,
Why are we
we
still
typically
stuck?
do 3 or 5 meetings, depending on what fishery it is and where it's focused, but we'll have some hybrid options. We'll probably sometimes do one in Raleigh, but we'll do definitely northern, central, southern part of the state. And then we'll sometimes we have a presentation, sometimes we just have sort of an open forum where folks can walk around. I think, something, a hybrid of those two, but
I would,
definitely an open opportunity for folks to give us their ideas on what they'd like to see changed in the fisheries.
I was on that S&P for Red Drum back in, I believe, the First Amendment. And then we moved the limit up to 10 fish per trip with the bycatch allowance. And then it come around and there's some boys somewhere up north that figured out they wanted to go out and target them.
I remember that.
And they decided that, and then they said, well, it's the 10 fish limit. No, because the quota has been filled, 250,000 pounds. That quota has been filled when the bag limit was 5 fish for commercial. So it's nothing to do with what's being caught. It's what's there to be caught. If there's a lot of fish there, then you're gonna catch a lot of fish. If there's not many fish there, you're not gonna catch many of them. So I believe straight across the board, regardless, without any bycatch allowance required, a 5 fish limit is completely reasonable.
I don't think one. If the rec guy can keep one, let the commercial guys keep one without a net. I mean, without a quota. Where do we stand on the flounder FMP? What are our numbers like? Have we, our harvest numbers, my opinion, and just my opinion, when we closed it, it really helped the species. And we have seen more in that bigger age class now than I think we've seen in years. And I think some of the pushback that the rec guys has been given the division is that, well, wait a minute, I'm catching these 3, 4 pounders, 5 pounders, and I'm having to let them go. Is that what we're seeing number wise? Do we know what kind of numbers we've gotten harvest wise from the last season? Or are we just kind of?
So the 2025 data for flounder is still very preliminary. Final estimates from MRIP won't actually be out likely until April. I think end of April typically. It's really unfortunate because it would be nice to be able to announce, what the fall flounder season is earlier in the year. Unfortunately, because of that lag time in getting those final estimates, that we can't do it until the end, typically.
Can we go to a 13-inch size limit on flounder?
Well, let Jeff.
So I just want to give you, so that's a great question. And that uncertainty is something in season length is something we want to address in Amendment 5. We don't want to wait until a month before the season and say, surprise, here's your season.
Oh, yeah, because I mean, as soon as you announce that, my phone rings.
Yep.
And I'm already booked.
Yep, and I do want to say, we don't have harvest numbers, but we do have some preliminary information that our stock assessment scientist, Matt Damiano, presented last November, which kind of gave us some impressions of what's going on in the stock. It wasn't a stock assessment, it's just looking at some indicators in the fishery. And we've seen some modest gains in abundance, but also that age structure is expanding. We are seeing more older fish. Now, it's not like it went through the roof and it opened it back up. His opinion on the data, a cursory snapshot was management is in the right ballpark. We're on our recovery path, but we're not at a point where it's like the stock is fully recovered. And we're not really going to be able to do that in North Carolina alone because this is a coastwide stock and coastwide reductions haven't really materialized. North Carolina, we've met our reductions pretty well. We've met at least what we needed to end overfishing and to start rebuilding the stock to the threshold. But other states they didn't go with hard quota. They changed their size and bag limits, South Carolina and Florida. And maybe due to natural stock abundance increases, maybe due to our reductions here, they've seen increases in catch
Yeah, but let's remember that until that reduction, we caught what, 85%, 80% of all the population anyhow.
I think that's the problem. You got 4 million people in 4 different states, all standing at the harvest window with a hand out, and every time a 15-inch fish passes through it, gone.
So
As of like 2024, some of that pressure off of it.
It was the coastwide reduction for 2024 compared to the terminal year of the stock assessment 2017 was about 37%. North Carolina, of course, took our 72% reduction because 24 was even more than that because we didn't have a recreational season due to paybacks in coastal waters. But you look south of us and each of those states saw an increase compared to the terminal year of the stock assessment. So we are disproportionately taking the brunt of the reductions needed. But in Amendment 5, we're currently developing a state level stock assessment because we can't control coastwide fishing mortality. And it's going to be an F-based approach rather than a biomass-based.
You're in a quota system. What difference does it make what size the fish comes from? You're in a quota system. So it shouldn't make any sense. So if I've got a group of people that's sitting there throwing back 13 and 14-inch fish and a good portion of them's dying, we're not getting anything out of those fish.
And generally, a very common practice is letting a fish spawn once, and that's how you set your size limits. The idea there with the size limit is to allow some spawning to occur before they enter the fishery to be harvested. Yes, there's going to be dead discards, but
how many dead fish are going to spawn?
So Kenny, those are ideas that were on the table when Amendment 3 was being discussed. And Amendment 4 was just a blip. Yeah, blip. So Amendment 5, I know those ideas are gonna come back on the table again in terms of, whether or not
But
this is.
if I remember, it was like a slot limit. We had big discussions about a slot. And so, and at the end, which amazed me about trout was biologists told us, hey, wait a minute, slot limits don't work. And then we went and we did it with trout.
Well,
And I know it's a different species, but it was the same thing. It's about if you're dealing with F and a slot limit doesn't help you get a bigger biomass or whatever the term is there, then that was why we really went away from that and just said, hey, over 15, because we decided that the slot limit was not going to help anyhow, because it would, if anything, it would lead to more high grading, which in my opinion is part of what the regulation is now. You're encouraging me to take that 17, 18 fish, and now granted, I've got a decent live well, but I'm gonna put it in my live well in case Junior catches a 22. I can let the 17 go and keep the 22. Does that 17 survive? I'd like to think it does, because I'm throwing, 2,000 gallons an hour at it, but
not if you take it off ice.
But not if I take it off ice. Exactly. There you go.
I think all those things will be on the.
So if you
comes
take,
on for flounder, when that group gets back together.
Yeah, it'll be early June, we'll have the,
take the F and you convert it into harvest, and your F goes down. Your harvest may be stalled when you reach quota, but still, you've dropped F down, mortality rate.
so we're,
Becomes harvest.
we're finishing up our initial draft and,
Yeah.
we'll be having early June, we'll have that first draft out to the advisory committee, whoever that may include. And they'll have a chance to walk through and give us feedback. What do they think needs to be changed, added, removed?
Well, I thought that's what we were here recommending, things that might need to be considered to be.
Yeah, they said the plan is still in, no formalizations happen, so there's not.
Yeah, so there will be an FMP specific advisory committee like you were on for Red Drum. This committee advises the Marine Fisheries Commission. The FMPAC will advise on changes to the plan.
So one thing that's important for us here in our, like, we're just having a roundtable discussion, but there's opportunities to serve on these species specific advisory committees. And obviously all of us can't serve on all these committees. You can only do what you can do, but it's important to recommend people, that you guys know within your constituent groups to say, hey, you should consider serving on this. And then you're able to share ideas from these discussions with them to bring forward, and so it just creates, you get other people, some other viewpoints that you can put on those committees. But then if you maintain contact with them and say, hey, let me know what you're talking about, you can bring those ideas here to us and say, here's what's going on with Southern Flounder. They're at the point of just exchanging ideas. What do people think about this? What do people think about that? Then you can bring that back to them and say, take this back to the Flounder Committee. The Southern folks really feel strongly about this, and so it's important to have your colleagues, folks in the circles that you guys work in a lot, serving on these committees, because that's the only way to get the stakeholder involvement, I'll give you guys a brief update. We've been, so after some of the fiascos in recently, most notably the shrimp trawl issue that came up in the summer, that, through the legislature, a small group of legislators had made a decision and said, we can't continue to do things like this, right? Where these bills come out of nowhere and they get amended and brought back and cause all kinds of firestorm, bad PR for the state. And so they recognize that the original Fisheries Reform Act dates back to 1997 and it needs some reformation. They also recognize that the way that bill first got passed was through a group of stakeholders from all across the state that were getting together in Raleigh, the legislators, on a monthly basis over a couple of years to put that legislation in place during the mid-90s. So they're basically recreating that process again. So they've brought several different folks to the table. So from the scientist side, they've invited myself and Jeff Buckle and Joe Fodry were three of the fisheries scientists that they've asked to participate in this. But there's commercial fishermen that are at the table. There's some recreational fishermen at the table. There's the members of different groups, some folks from the Marine Estuarine Foundation, some folks from WRC. There's folks, obviously Director Rawls is there, and some other members from the division staff, as well as some legislators. And so Senator Hanig, who's from up in the northern part of the state, Representative Godwin, who's from the Chowan River area. There's another representative. They're pretty passionate about making sure that we get something done to kind of inform broadly some of the management processes in the state. And we've just started. We've met twice so far. And so we feel that there's a lot of promise that over the next year or so that we can make some progress in making some broader scale changes. And those are going to go out to all these groups and stakeholder groups to get feedback on. But I just want to let you guys know that they've started this and they've invited different folks to participate.
Do you have anybody from like the public policy MCOP program or anything of that's been because when I was going through that program, we actually had some students and professors looking at
the
Marine Fishery Commission,
like Dr. Winkle. Yeah. No, but as far as I know, not right now they don't. But it could be that they're open to suggestions from folks. We haven't really gotten to that point yet. Basically, all we did in the first meeting was we went around the table and everybody said why they're in there. Right. And the second meeting, we, basically they said, why don't you, everyone go home, take the Fisheries Reform Act right here, piece of legislation, House Bill 1097 that was passed in 1997. Go through the Fisheries Reform Bill and come back to the next meeting and tell us, maybe pick 3 or 4 items in the Fisheries Reform Act that you think either absolutely need to be retained or absolutely need to be amended, right? And then, so what we did we just met yesterday and we just spent time going around the room talking about those things. And then the next meeting, I think we're going to start to have some structured discussion on each of those items. How the Marine Fisheries Commission is formed, the membership of that committee, science advisory committees in the state, the frequency of stock assessments, interim measures to make management decisions based on real, triggers that can happen much more quickly, how to speed up this process while retaining a lot of stakeholder involvement. Right. Oftentimes those two things are opposed to one another. Have lots of opportunities for public and stakeholder engagement. It slows the process down. So when you want to speed it up, well, how do you do that and retain the ability of all stakeholders to weigh in and have some feedback? And so
that and funding.
Yeah, well, we all said that. We said, none of this matters if you guys don't resource it.
That's the problem you guys have with a lot of this right now.
And so they agree.
Because they slam things down your throat and tell you, okay, well, it's like the app now that we've got for reporting.
Yeah.
They said we got to have one. Is it an effective sample? From what I understand, it's not an effective sample.
I mean, it's still very much in the beginning phases. It's not.
It's not an effective sample. It's not MREP, which we know is a faulty system to begin with.
MREP is still the only scientifically certified recreational data collection method in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So now we've got an app that's going to produce data that's going to
Use everybody.
Well, no, there'll have to be some opinion of it, but
I think there is some concern with the mandatory harvest reporting program that there will be a number generated from that, and depending on kind of your stance on something, you might want to use that number, or you might want to use the number generated by MRIP, and depending on which one suits you, you might be more likely to go towards one or the other. The division stance right now is MRIP is what we are using for management decisions. It's while mandatory harvest reporting, potentially one day in the future could provide some useful information. MRIP is still what we plan to use to.
North Carolina, right? MRIP is informed. I mean, in North Carolina, MRIP is probably one of the most best informed states because of the field work that you guys do, which is what feeds into MRIP in North Carolina. So,
Yeah, we go.
Far above and beyond what a lot of other states do is.
My only argument with that is that the problem with NREP is it's always that snapshot there at the dock, right? And with the growth of our coastal fishing population, I mean, how many people are on the water now? There's a large sample of people that never go to a public dock, that never get sampled. So generally, those guys are the guys that are really good fishermen, and they bought a house at Old Point or Forest Sound or wherever because it had a boat ramp. Yeah.
So theoretically, the way MRIP works is the dockside survey, APIS, the Access Point Angler Intercept Survey, is kind of what we get the catch rate with. In order to get an effort estimate, we use the Fishing Effort Survey, which currently is a mail survey that's sent out to people. It used to be a telephone survey, but that switched a number of years ago. So theoretically, if the catch rate between the public access angler that we intercept and the catch rate from the private dock angler that we don't intercept, if that doesn't differ, we're still getting that effort information. So we're capturing that their harvest also. But you do make a good point that it is possible that private dock angler is more successful than that public boat rep angler that we intercept. So there is the potential for there to be some discrepancy there. But still, we should,
like you said, increasing, number of people that.
Is it integrated with a WRC license? Matt?
You mean the mandatory harvest reporting? So because WRC has control over the Go Outdoors app, we don't have the ability to fully integrate it into that app. But there is a link currently. If you click on the little fish symbol at the bottom of the Go Outdoors app, it'll take you to kind of like a list of links. And there's a link to the mandatory harvest report and web form on that, in that list within the Go Outdoors app. So you can get to it, it's just not within the app itself.
So Jesse, I need to apologize and then ask Tom. So I have to leave a little bit. I have to leave in a couple of minutes because I have to pick up my 14-year-old daughter from volleyball practice, and she's mean when I'm on time. So if I'm late, she's really mean. And so I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure that Tom was okay to continue as the vice chair to kind of run the rest of the meeting. We're just still in sort of, a roundtable discussion. We don't have agenda items to vote on.
Yep. I'll just do this. Let me ask you a question, Fred. Being
Yes.
you're our Cape Fear striped bass man, give me a little update of what's happening and with the shad and the striped bass. Striped bass aren't probably there yet, but how did last year turn out, and what's this year looking like from what you've seen or
Yeah.
heard?
So what Tom's referring to is, so my lab has been involved with working with some folks from Clemson and the Nature Conservancy to look at striped bass and American shad migration, particularly passage of Lock and Dam 1, but also passage of Lock and Dam 2 and 3 to try to get to historic spawning grounds, looking at a variety of different approaches. We started out and we're still evaluating what they're calling e-flows or environmental flows. So as a mechanism to pass fish. So when there's precipitation in the basin, they work with the Army Corps to release water from Jordan Lake. And we know what needs to be released in terms of flow rates to basically submerge all three of the locks and dams and allow fish to pass over those. And so those e-flow events, again, they're haphazard because we can only do them when there's enough precipitation in the basin and enough water in Jordan, because they can't lower the water in Jordan below a certain level. But the Army Corps folks have been really, really fantastic and their engineers at working with the Nature Conservancy to try to really get dialed in on the release path and the timing of release of water out of Jordan. When we're able to generate those events, we get tremendous passage success. The shad are able to pass over the rock arch at Lock and Dam 1, which was redesigned in built in 2012 or 13, redesigned in 2021. And the shad have always had reasonable passage success over there. 60–70% of the fish available below will go over that rock arch. And they can do that at low flows. The striped bass, not so much, right? They can use it at low flows and get over it, but only very small percentages, maybe 20–25%. But what we've also been working on more recently is there's a side channel at Lock and Dam 1. And there are some wooden dikes up above that prevent water flow from back down too much through that side channel. And we've been looking at striped bass use of that side channel during certain flow events. So we've done some drone work and we've outfitted that creek and most of the little braids of that creek with acoustic receivers. And I think last year, 70% of the striped bass that went above Lock and Dam 1 use that side channel. And they have to have some flow in order to use that side channel. And so the land is owned by a timber company. I think it's Corbett Timber Company. And they have given the easement to the Nature Conservancy. So they don't want to sell the land, but they give the Nature Conservancy an easement. And they brought in some engineers to look at how they can augment that side channel and create attractive flow so that striped bass can get up and around the Lock and Dam.
The ladder type situation work?
Yeah, I mean, there's an old fish ladder at Lock and Dam 3. I don't think it really is functional. There's talk about.
I mean, they got some circle backwash.
Yeah.
That work real well.
There's talk about lowering Lock and Dam 2 because the problem with Lock and Dam 1 and 3 is that Wilmington gets its water from behind Lock and Dam 1. And Fayetteville gets its water from behind Lock and Dam 3, and the dams create natural ponding that occurs so that their intakes are always submerged. And so they don't want to see either of those touched. But Lock and Dam 2 doesn't have that issue. So there's some talk about lowering Lock and Dam 2 so it's always underwater so that the fish will always be able to swim. And the problem is that when the Lock and Dams historically, and even after the rock arch was built at Lock and Dam 1 back in 2012, the locks were still operational and the Army Corps was doing maintenance locking on a regular basis. They never were able to do the anadromous fish conservation locking that was requested, but they were still doing maintenance locking. And a lot of fish were passing on LD2 and 3 during those maintenance locking. Well, both of those are broken now. And neither of those locks is functional. So there's no maintenance locking to get fish over 2 and 3. And so this spring, we're going to be doing more work with stripers in the side channel. We're also doing some trap and transport work with shad. So we're catching shad right below 3 and actually transporting them above 3 so they can get up. We've got receivers going all the way up to Lillington and Buckhorn Dam, which is the historic spawning grounds. And so we're going to be doing some active tracking. Clemson's going to be doing some egg and larval sampling to see if there's any spawning taking place up there when shad and stripers. We're going to actually do trap and transport with both species, mostly shad, but we get some stripers that'll get to the base of.
I thought what we were catching, and this is 1988, 89, 90. At Buckhorn, when we used to fish in college, those were hybrids, so they weren't actual stripers.
Yeah. And that's possible. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like there's not a significant amount of natural spawning happening, just like the same problems in the noose and the tarpan. I know that, aren't they, this year, you guys are getting fish from Santa Barbara, right? A different brood stock strain.
Yeah, the stock in the Cape Fear, yeah.
Stock in the Cape Fear, because historically they were always stocked from Roanoke fish, right? And even though they were pulling brood stock from the Cape Fear, those were Roanoke fish originally. They were from, or they were offspring of Roanoke fish.
Did they go back or?
No, we don't see any evidence of them going back, but it's just the Roanoke's such a different system compared to the Cape Fear.
I thought it was the egg density
Well, there's that.
The
issue.
Roanoke fish have a thicker egg density.
Okay.
Therefore, when you put them in the Cape Fear, you've got the low flow in Cape Fear, the eggs sink to the bottom in the mud and die. And you're not getting any effect of actually releasing all those eggs.
Does any of this affect the sturgeon too? You said you were
So
looking at
the
that.
sturgeon, I mean, the sturgeon are interesting in that historically there were both fall and spring runs of sturgeon. The rivers above, like up in lower Virginia and two of the rivers in South Carolina have confirmed fall and spring Atlantic sturgeon runs that are genetically distinct. In other words, those fish are genetically different from each other. And if you look at the historic landings of sturgeon back in the late 1800s and through the early part of the early 20th century, the more landings occurred in fall than they did in spring. A lot of folks drift net in fall for sturgeon. The problem is in the spring,
The roe fishery.
yeah, the roe fishery was what really decimated the stock, was a huge demand for the caviar turn of the century.
Yeah.
But then we had a fishery for the Cape Fear River. The Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission didn't issue a moratorium along the coast until 98. I think North Carolina issued their own in 96 maybe, but there were people fishing them all through the 80s and 70s. So we've talked with a lot of those fishermen on Cape Fear and families of those fishermen. And the spring fish seem to be doing just fine, spawning right below Lock and Dam 1. So they're spawning right below the dam. We catch adults there every spring. They're already here. Like, we've already detected a lot of the fish we've tagged, and some of them are back already. They only stay in they come back in usually in late February, early March. They make their way up there. Sometimes they delay in the lower river, but eventually they make their way up to Lock and Dam 1. They stay up there. The males stay up there longer, just like the males on ladies' night. They stay at the bar longer. The girls come and go, So the females will go up there for a few weeks. The males will stay up there for 4 to 6 weeks. But by early May, when the temperature hits about 20 degrees Celsius, it starts getting towards 70 degrees or so, they're gone. They're in the ocean, and they're on their way to New York or New England, and they're up there all summer. They come back down here through the winter, or go south of here, Georgia and South Carolina, overwinter off of those areas. And then they come back into the Cape Fear in like February. In the fall, though, all the fall spawners have to start at much higher temperatures. The water temperature is still 27, 28 degrees C. It's still 85 degrees in September. And so what they've shown in South Carolina is those fish go much further upriver to get to areas with better oxygenation, right? So they're getting up above the fall line where there's shallower water, lots of rapid, lots better oxygen transfer, as opposed to the slower moving deeper waters, low Lock and Dam 1.
Is this thing connecting the striper, is that going to help the sturgeon too, you think?
Yeah, we think that the sturgeon, the spring sturgeon seem to be it's been 100 years since Lock and Dam 1 has been there, and they seem to be spawning below it. We've collected some eggs. We're seeing juveniles each year. The same adults keep coming back year after year after year below Lock and Dam 1. The fall fish, though, they need to get further up the river back to those historic spawning grounds. And so if there's some better passage around the rock arch, we've had a couple fall fish go over the rock arch. And when we catch them, when they come back down, they're all beat up, climbing over the rocks, But we think there's only a remnant fall population left. We think the Lock and Dams really hurt the fall fish more than the spring because it's just too hot. Better go. All right. So Tom, it's all you.
Keep working on that bypass creek, because I think that's the only way we're ever going to get anywhere. And if they can get rid of Rumble Down number 2, that'll help greatly.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion, has been for umpteen years.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Okay, so where we need to take over, basically still issues of the AC members. Is that where we are? Or are we still roundtable discussion?
Roundtable or issues, either one.
They kind of run together, and that's where I want to know where y'all need to be.
I got one I'd like to pick up and ask the question if it's possible.
Please do.
Amendment 5 on the flounder, if we can come to some kind of redistribution of the quota for the commercial sector. It's not working as is, because when the quota shift took the 25% back to the recreational, they took it all from one spot, took it all from the net fishermen. And that left us with 2 days this year. And that's just, that's not gonna work. They didn't take anything from any other group of commercial fishermen. We can have a redistribution, and the feelings that I'm getting from the people that I'm talking to is that what we need is a 60-40 quota, 60% for pound nets and or fixed gears, and 40% for mobile gears. And then the mobile gears would be split between the south and the north, 50-50. You know, if you're going to have an equal fair sharing, and I completely understand that pound nets are an expensive piece of equipment, but it's a piece of equipment that gets used year after year after year. It's not like a gill net. You use it this year, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to be rehanging it next spring. So it's just as expensive for a net fisherman to operate as it is a pound net fisherman to operate, if you come to a dollar value on that.
Definitely something we can look at.
The quota was, when it all started out and we all realized it was eventually going to go to 50-50, that's not the problem. The problem is, it seems like you have like a special carve outs for individual groups of fishermen. And an example of that is, to accommodate pound nets, you had to put 50,000 pounds in the southern pound net fishery. Well, there's not a pound net in the southern part of the state. So to accommodate that, they had to take the division line between the northern district and the southern district, and had to shift it 50 miles north to accommodate a southern pound net fishery. And there's never been a pound net south of the Highway 58 bridge, which is the dividing line between the northern district and southern district. But now that line has been moved up, I guess, what do you call it, Wainwright, somewhere around that area.
Yeah, up top of Core Sound.
Right.
And Shot Island. Right, yeah.
That's a carve out. That's for a special group of people getting special treatment. We don't do that. That's not equal. It's not fair to all fishermen. In other words, I won't be fair to the commercial fishermen, and I won't be fair to the recreational fishermen. It's the 50-50 quota, and that's it. Now, how they want to divide their fish up and how we want to divide our fish up, that's our business. And I feel that way. I feel like, to be fair, you've got two gear categories. In the commercial fishery, you got a fixed gear and a mobile gear, and they should both have the same amount of quota. But I'm saying just a little, even giving just a little bit and moving the fixed gears to 60% quota and the mobile gears to 40%, and dividing those mobile gears up into a north-south district. Completely, that would be fair. But having 2 days to work, that's, you know, you're not talking about somebody going out there to catch one for fun. You're talking about somebody that's going out there to earn a living. And that's the difference.
Yeah, that's definitely a reasonable thing to approach in this plan. Typically, the division, that this is like a more of an industry issue. So if the industry wants that, we can do it. But this would be where the advisory committee would need to have appropriate.
Well, I think it's something that sure need to look at, because that's simply not quote unquote fair. simply not fair. And we're all citizens.
Yep, and
We
I
all
think,
get fish.
I think it can be particularly hard, especially for a group like the largemouth gill netters that feel like they've been sort of excluded from this fishery to want to participate in this advisory committee because they feel disenfranchised. But if you know folks that would be willing to serve on this, if you could represent that group, that would be fantastic.
I've already put my application.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Who else has an issue?
I'd like to say something.
Hey,
if you-
Jeremy.
Hey, Tom, if you and Jesse will allow me, I'd like to revisit the Bonito topic, and
Yep.
and if we can, I feel like we're missing an opportunity as our advisory committee. I'd like to make a motion. You know,
I'm
and
not
and
sure
I'm all
we're really
for-
supposed to have motions in this meeting. I don't believe. This was, I thought, just roundtable discussion, and then the staff takes those ideas under consideration. Am I correct?
Tom, if the committee would like to make a motion, and vote on that motion, we do have a quorum of members in attendance. You're more than welcome to.
Okay, perfectly fine. Okay, Jeremy. And I gotta let a dog in the back door, so you keep talking. I'll be right back.
Okay. And I know we got a couple new members on our committee. So I would just like to say that, you know, I'm all for management, you know, with justified management, put it that way. I'm just concerned that this is setting a precedent as far as the Bonito FMP. I know we have no stock assessment on it. I don't know. You know, I know it was recommended by the commission or brought up by the commission, but I just would like to recommend, you know, and see if we can take a vote as a committee, Tom, for a recommendation to the FMC to keep it. And I want to see where, you know, our committee stands. Maybe take a vote to see about keeping it status quo until more data is collected before we make decisions on that. So, you know, if we could take a vote on that and just see where we stand as a committee. That way, you know, they have something to back their decision making possibly.
Very good then. If you want to make a motion, and we'll have, if somebody wants to second it, we'll have further discussion.
So my motion would be to keep the Bonito fishery status quo until further data is collected.
Okay, we have a motion
Jeremy,
to keep it status quo. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a second. Now from that, we have discussion. Who wants to make a comment? And being I'm handicapped by being on the computer here, I cannot quite see. And Jesse, can you kind of control who's raising their hands or speaking? Because I can't quite tell.
I certainly can. And Jeremy, if you don't mind just looking at the screen to make sure that the wording that I have there for that motion captures what you intended for it to.
Yeah, and I just, you know, as a group, I'd like for them to know like where we stand. You know, I think that's one part of this meeting, and it's a current issue that we actually have a say so in. So I'd like to voice our opinion. So yes, I didn't get to see all the options, but I didn't see any data that justified anything other than status quo until there's more data provided. So yes. That is correct, Jesse.
Mike, I agree with you, Five Fish. I completely agree with it 100%. But I think what Jeremy is trying to put forward here is we don't even know what the status of the fishery is. We have no clue whatsoever. We just
Well, I think Jeremy's also looking out for his boys up north that are harvesting commercially and doesn't want to quote it, but on deal.
No,
I don't have any boys up north. What I'm concerned about is setting a concerning precedent of
Of trying to
managing,
save a species before we overfish it?
restricting fisheries
Nothing,
without,
nothing says species in danger.
Hold
Where
on
does
one
it
at a
say
time, please. Jeremy speaking.
yeah, I don't know what boys up north you're referring to, but what I'm concerned about is setting a precedent as far as rulemaking without justification. That's what I'm concerned about. We're setting a precedent where the commission can bring up something, vote on it, and pass it, make a rule to manage this fisheries or regulate this fisheries, and that's technically not management. That's regulating. I mean, we don't have any data. I know Jesse said it's low on data for this fisheries. Is it true that did I hear that we do have a stock assessment scientist now? Jesse, did I hear that or is that correct?
We have 2 stock assessment scientists now.
Yeah.
Matt Damiano is the stock assessment program manager, and then Matt Zink is a stock assessment scientist.
Not to get off subject, but I was just curious if we do have a scientist now. But with that being said, I feel like there should be some more data collected in any fisheries. It's not just this. I don't care which fishery it is. We can't make decisions based off of opinions, and that's where I stand. And that's why I want to vote on this. Not as far as the fishery itself, the fish, that particular fish. I'm concerned about setting a precedent to continue doing this on what's going to be next, and that's where I stand.
Sheephead's already next. It's already on the board. It's being managed without a fisheries management plan or an assessment. There's nothing there. It seems like we're making rules for the sake of making rules. And it makes no sense whatsoever. If it's an essential rule, you'll find me 100% on the board. But I see nothing that says this fish is in danger. I see nothing that says sheep is in danger.
So your argument is we have to let the stock collapse before we do anything?
No, we don't have to let stock collapse. We
Well,
have to get an assessment of where the stock is.
If we take proactive measures, we don't have to worry about that. Or are we going to wait and let it do like flounder and bite us in the butt, or like trout and bite us in the butt? Or are we going to be proactive and say, hey, guess what? 5 fish is plenty. So
Tom, if you don't mind, it might be helpful for me to just talk a little bit about what the options that were in the issue paper were, just to kind of make sure the committee's aware of what was actually discussed in that.
Please do, please do.
So there was 4 options presented to the Marine Fisheries Commission in this issue paper. Option 1 is just, remain status quo. Don't develop a rule that gives the director any proclamation authority to implement management on the Atlantic bonito fishery, and there wouldn't be any kind of bag limit or anything in permanent rule. Option 2 is basically the sheep's head rule that we currently have. It gives the director broad proclamation authority over both the recreational and commercial sectors to put management in place for bonito. Every one of the options I'll talk about does have that prior MFC consent built into it that I talked about earlier. Option 3 also gives the director that broad proclamation authority, but it also limits the recreational bag limit to only 5 fish. If the director were to issue a proclamation, the recreational bag limit couldn't be any higher than 5. It doesn't automatically set a 5 fish bag limit. Like if the commission selected that option and it became effective, there wouldn't automatically be any regulation in place. Same with the sheep's head version of the rule, option 1. It would require the director to issue a proclamation to actually implement management. Whether or not the director does that will be determined by the look at the data that we have available, and the division will determine if we need to actually try to implement management at that time. Option 4 is the only option that will actually put a regulation in place upon the effective date of the rule. There would be a 5 fish bag limit in permanent rule that when the rule becomes effective, recreational fishermen are only allowed 5 fish. As far as the proclamation authority, for option 4, there would still be that broad proclamation authority that the director would have that, you know, the director could manage the commercial fishery, could put management in there for the commercial fishery, could put additional management for the recreational fishery. But all of that, with the exception of that 5-fish bag limit that would be in permanent rule, would only be done after the division looked at the available data and determined that regulations were necessary. Any option in this rule, with the exception of option 4 with that 5-fish bag limit and permanent rule, wouldn't automatically subject the bonito fishery to management. It just gives us a tool in the toolbox in order to be able to put management in place. And I will say it's after 8, and we did only have the room till 8. So at some point we do need to kind of wrap up the discussion.
Quick question.
Uh-huh.
When we talk about these 4 management options, are they coming back to the AC at some point, or is it just going to be voted on at the?
So that is up to the Marine Fisheries Commission. The commission could decide to have a vote that actually put management or that basically said, we want to take this out to the advisory committees to get their input before we move forward. It's a little different than with FMPs. It's not statutorily required to come to the ACs. The process for rulemaking that the commission has initiated is, since they selected their preferred option, option 4, the division will do a fiscal analysis of that option this spring. The Office of State Budget Management will approve that or disapprove it, hopefully approve it if we do our job correctly. And then it'll come back to the commission in May for them to vote on notice of text, which starts that official rulemaking process and goes out to the proposed rule goes out to the public. In November is when final adoption would be.
And we still have public comment in between, right? We're not sealing anything one way or the other.
That's exactly right. The public comment period after May, assuming the commission votes for notice of text, would be a 60-day public comment period with a public hearing. And if the commission determined they wanted to do something different, they absolutely could during that process. If in November, if they decided like, hey, we got a lot of public comment, they said do something different, we need to do something different, they could select another option or, you know, come up with their own option, and that would just kind of start that process over again. And the commission could in May decide like, send it out to AC if we need their input.
Gotcha.
I sat on a bunch of these FMPs of red drum, blue crab, and others. In each one of those fisheries management program processes, each one of those processes graphs, oh, look, the fish did this at this time, they did that at that time, this is their condition, that was the condition. We have none of that information. None, absolutely none. We don't know how many fish are out there. We probably don't know a good count on how many are being caught because they're highly migratory species running up and down the coast. How many bonita commercially caught in North Carolina? You got the data right there, all you got to do is pull it up.
I don't have it immediately available, but
It is very few.
And Ken, we would be happy to provide that issue paper to you. If you go back to the email from a week before last of the Marine Fisheries Commission update, it has that issue paper linked in there. And I'd be happy to send that to you again, as well as the presentation from the commission, the February commission.
I watched the whole program on the internet. So.
And Tom, I do want to say some of the staff here have said that we do need to get out of the room here soon. So we probably should try to wrap it up as possible.
Okay, well, that is fine. Well, we do need to have someone call the question if the discussion is finished.
Be that person.
I'll make a motion to close discussion.
Call the question.
Question is therefore called. Let's vote. Jess, you want to do it, being you're in there?
I certainly can. Boyce?
Hey.
Lee?
No.
Lucas?
Sorry, I'm new at this process. Am I saying yes or no to what Jeremy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Morris is absent. Apagard?
No.
Seer?
No.
Siegler?
Yes.
And is absent. Jeremy?
Yes.
Smith?
I guess I don't vote unless there's a tie, correct?
It's up to you.
Yeah, if I don't care to vote unless there's a tie.
All right. And Sharp is absent. Looks like. Yeah, it looks like this fails 3-4.
Yep. Okay, we're dispensed with that. Is there, if we're needing to get out, is there any further business that needs to come before this board?
I'd like to discuss the commercial gear issue. And hooking line is being commercial gear in the flounder fishery.
One question, Jess, how much time do we have left available in your room?
I think almost none. No, like we have to get out almost right away. And Ken, if you have additional input you would like to provide, like we're happy to talk to you after the meeting. We will give you a call.
Just a small point. I have no problem with using the hooking line in the commercial fishery, but the purpose for which it's being used is for recreational purposes. And those flounder caught should not go toward the commercial quota if they go toward recreational quota. That's the only issue I have for you.
Okay.
That's something that we can look at with the plan, like
Yeah.
in the development of the plan.
Duly noted. Is there anything else? And if not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And we got a second. All those in favor, I'm going to do it this way. All those in favor either say aye or raise your hand if you're online. It looks like everybody's doing it. I officially call us adjourned. Thank y'all, gentlemen.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hooking line. That's how you don't figure it out.
You too, buddy. You can have one. I'll share you with you.